Morning. Good to see you all. Happy Friday, everybody. Everybody take a deep breath in. Ready? In and out. Feels good. We're here at the end of the week, but we are still going, and we're excited for a wonderful time this morning. I have one announcement for you, but before I do that, I wanted to make sure we give a nice APU warm welcome to a few guests that we have with us today. We have some prospective students and families joining us for Transfer Day, so if you're here, can you please stand up so that we can recognize you? If you're here for Transfer Day, welcome. Thank you so much for coming and being with us. You may be seated. Glad to have you with us in chapel this morning. And in a little while, I'm going to introduce our guest speaker, and we're really blessed to have him with us this morning. But before that, I wanted to make one announcement for the Center for Student Action. Wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to hear about this chance that we have to serve some of our fellow Californians that went through a devastating fire that just took place this past semester called the Camp Fire over the heart of it was in a city called Paradise, and it's considered one of the most destructive, one of the deadliest fires that California has ever seen. Lots of families displaced, a lot of fatalities. So in other words, just a lot of brokenness that needs some love, some care, specifically a lot of neighborhoods and communities that need help cleaning debris and getting things back from homes that were evacuated. So all that to say, it's a great opportunity to go and serve. So the Center for Student Action is putting that together, and you could take a look at this event. It's called Paradise Rise. It's going to be February 14th through the 17th. And like I said, the fire devastated like 150,000 acres, 14,000 homes. So just a great opportunity to go up and to help out in NorCal with some individuals who are affected by that. You might not be able to see how to get connected, but feel free to either swing by the Center for Student Action on East Campus, or you could even email csamarketing@apu.edu, and that's the best way to get connected. So don't miss out on an opportunity to go up there for a few days in February to help out. Be a great way to be a blessing. So this morning, our guest speaker is the Executive Director of the Office of Faith Integration, also teaches various classes across the university, but his primary role is to support the faculty along the lines of faith integration. I had an opportunity to co-teach a class with him this past semester, and we had a blast, and I got to see his heart, got to see the way that he goes about his work and why he loves being here at APU. He loves Jesus, all his heart. He loves you students and really loves teaching and supporting those who teach as well here on campus. So I know you're going to be blessed. I'm going to be blessed. I'm excited. Help me welcome Dr. Paul Cack.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it. All right, happy to be here. I just got to start from the classroom side of things and thank Koba and all of the campus pastors, thank the Office of Chapel Programs, because what you guys do weekly here and in other places where you make your contributions helps us to be able to do what we do in the classroom. You know, you set a tone and an atmosphere that this is a place, living and breathing place of faith. And so when we come into classrooms where that's not necessarily the core topic, the tone has been set and we can go there. So thank you for the partnership that we have as we serve the university together. It's fun to see former students on stage here. It's fun to see former students out there. I'm honored to be with you today. So when I graduated from high school back in the 80s, the decade of great music and horrible movies, I, along with many of my friends, wanted to go to a Christian university. So some of my friends went off to places like APU. We heard there were pretty girls here, so many went to APU. Some compromised, went to Biola or Westmont. I wanted to do that as well, but it didn't work out for my family to do that, so I applied to UCLA. And it was an exciting day when that letter came back from the admissions office, and we opened it up eagerly, and I got the news that I had been rejected. Not accepted to UCLA. And it was heartbreaking. So third choice, I went down the street to Cal State University of Northridge. Not far from home, university there. I could still live at home, save a little money. I was a junior high pastor at the time, and so I continued working in my church. And I got a good education at CSUN. But even there, I was determined to actually maybe get for myself, to create for myself a Christian education. And although I didn't have these words at the time, the poetic words of Dr. Mark Knoll in his book, Jesus Christ and the Life of the Mind, were things that I was committed to. He says, the light of Christ illuminates the laboratory. His speech is the fount of communication. He makes possible the study of humans in their interactions. He's the source of all life. Christ provides the wherewithal for every achievement of human civilization. He's the telos of all that is beautiful. He is, among his many other titles, the Christ of the academic road. Most of my professors at CSUN didn't believe this. In fact, many of my professors taught against this. In certain contexts, it was a battle, so I took matters into my own hands. I wanted to get a Christian education. I couldn't get it in the way that you're getting the opportunity, the privilege to have it, so I thought I'd do it for myself. I took a class, for example, in theories of persuasion. Theories of persuasion. We were studying all these theories, and we were asked to pick a great persuasive speaker in history and to compare that speaker's style and approach with the theories we were learning. People were picking folks like Ronald Reagan, the great communicator, and Winston Churchill, Margaret Thatcher, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King. I picked this guy, Charles Haddon Spurgeon. And when I proposed that to my professor, the professor said, could we talk in my office? I don't know who this person is. And I sat down with her and I explained that this was one of the great Christian preachers from the turn of the 18th, 19th hundreds. And he was a preacher in London before the days of amplification, preaching to thousands. And I wanted to better understand how the theories of persuasion and his approach and his Christian commitments came together. How did his belief in the role of the Holy Spirit and his belief in the authority of the Christian scriptures, how did those things come together with the theories in his work? And it's a great opportunity. I didn't have a name for it then, but it was a great opportunity to do academic faith integration. I took a class on Introduction to Buddhism. And in the first day of class, because I'm that kind of guy, I went and met my professor and told him I was a Christian and that I was eager to better understand other world religions. He had a sly grin on his face and told me that he was a third-generation Zen Buddhist priest and that it would be his mission to convert me. First day of class, right? Well, I took that as an opportunity to go deep in Buddhism and to understand as best as I could the relationship between the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of Buddha, and to see the places where there was some intersection and to better understand where there were distinct differences. I took a class in ancient ethical philosophies, and about midway through the first few weeks of the semester, I realized that on all these ancient ethical philosophies, there was to be no conversation of Christianity. So I went up to the professor. She had been very informal with us. Her name was Jill. And I said, hey Jill, where's Christianity? That's an ancient Christian philosophy. And she very empathetically, it was one of those great moments with the professor, she says, that's right. That's a missing piece in this class. I confess I don't know much about that. I'll make you a deal. How about instead of writing that final research paper, you do some research on that and you teach our class on that topic? And I said, that sounds great, but let me make you a counteroffer. I will do that if you'll also let me write the research paper, because I wanted to take all those things that I was learning and capture them in a way that I could hold on to them. And I got to teach my peers about the Sermon on the Mount and how the Sermon on the Mount and the teachings of Paul related to the teachings of Aristotle and Plato and others, things that we were learning. I didn't know it, but I was involved in academic faith integration. APU is different, of course, because we build that into life at this university. That is a part of the curriculum. That's a part of the expectation we have when people come to be faculty members at APU, to bring their disciplinary or professional expertise into conversation with the Christian faith. And that's actually my job, to support them and to resource them and to encourage them in that vital part of their work in providing a distinctly Christian education. But today I get to be with you, and I'm very honored to be able to spend this part of our day together talking to you about these things. So I'd like to take a few minutes to give you some handles for how you can do this, whatever the professor may or may not do, right? This doesn't have to be something you wait for the professor to bring. You can bring it. You can step up and make this happen. And I want to share some of the things I didn't know I was doing way back then, some of the things I've learned since then that are designed to set you up with these kinds of competencies. So in that light, my title today is that we're going to do a crash course, student edition, in academic faith integration. More specifically, I want to talk to you for a few minutes about the why, the what, the how, and the who of faith integration. My goal today is to inspire you to feel more convinced of the priority and the privilege of this part of what it means to be APU, that you might engage in this with greater capacity and find how life-giving it is for you as disciple scholars during your precious years at APU. So let's start with why. Why should we seek to meaningfully integrate the Christian faith with what we are learning? Some years ago, the American Association of Colleges and Universities identified a set of learning outcomes that they believed would be important for students entering the 21st century. Certain things that people like you needed to be able to do once you leave here in anticipation of entering a challenging world. And one of those was integrative learning. The AAC&U believes that between the time that you start, some of you are just starting, you're wrapping up here, finishing your first year, some of you are near the end, and the time that you finish, to be able to move from making simple connections among ideas and experiences to synthesizing and transferring learning to new and complex situations. Okay, so why would that be so important? Well, first of all, that's just the way reality is, right? Reality is complex, that knowledge is not left in boxes. You go out into the world and things are intersecting with each other. They're integrated, right? And to be able to detect what's going on there is valuable. But more importantly is that we can no longer live in our siloed worlds, our worlds where we have our specialist myopic thinking and think that that is sufficient. It's not. Let me just give you a couple examples of that. Just this Wednesday, I was sitting up there in chapel listening to Dr. Katharine Hayhoe talk about climate change. This is an incredibly complex issue. It's going to require integrative thinking from people like her, but she knows. You probably heard her say how important it is that people come from various disciplines and various areas of knowledge and come into conversation with each other and be able to integrate things in order to address this urgent reality of your generation and mine of our day. Healthy communities, from the air to the land, to think about people in our communities who don't have access to clean air or to health care, don't have access to even good food. There are places in our world, in our cities, that the closest grocery store people have to them is the mini mart or the fast food restaurant. This is going to require integrative thinking for people to recognize the complexity of these challenges and come together. The challenge of social media. We have more connection and more information these days than we ever have, and we need to figure out how to grapple with that in thoughtful ways. Policing. I'm so happy and grateful that we have a criminal justice program, a great faculty, a number of you in that program who are taking a challenging issue and giving it a fresh look and thinking about how we can be more equitable in the challenge of providing care and protection for our communities, not to mention the future of education. Addressing any of these and many others will require integrative thinking, integrative proposals, integrative solutions, and so every university that exists should be preparing its students to do that. But at APU we believe and do our best to practice a value-added element to that. We're convinced that the truth and the wisdom of the Christian scriptures, the rich insights of our faith tradition offer additional guidance to these challenging issues. And practicing that in the classroom will allow you not only to develop the skills of integrative thinking generally, but to be able to bring Christian theological wisdom into the world of complex issues. John Henry Newman was a Christian scholar at Oxford during the 1800s. And he wrote a book in the 1850s, an important book on this very topic, the idea of a university. Newman says, "Invite in God, and you introduce among the subjects of your knowledge something real that encompasses, closes in upon, and absorbs every other conceivable fact. How can we investigate any part of any discipline of knowledge and stop short of the ultimate knowledge which enters into every field of study? All true principles run over with this knowledge. All phenomena converge into it. It is truly the first and the last." Why academic faith integration? As you develop this ability, you'll be developing your capacity to be a difference maker. in the homes and the neighborhoods, the organizations, the cities, the governments where you will be called to live and work. But more importantly, you're going to be reminded that the truth of God can be found in more places than just chapel, church, and Bible classes. When I engage in this and find myself having opportunity to go deep into some of these in my own efforts, I remember that God is not locked in a VeggieTales video or a religious podcast or high school summer camp, as valuable as those things are. He's active and indispensable in all of life and in all of learning. Think about art making. Without God, you've got materials like clay and paint and gestures and light and sound. Without ultimate knowledge, those are little more than playthings in the studio or on the stage. But invite in God, and you discover his character is manifested in these materials in ways that show the inadequacy of words to reveal his character as someone more than just someone we can explain, that he is the God of beauty and awe, and these things become instruments of praise in our lives. Let's talk about what. What are we looking at when we're engaging in academic faith integration? So every area of study, more particularly every class, exists in layers. On the outer layer is the focus of the class. So this is what you'd expect by the title or the course description, right? If you're going to come into COM 111, Public Com, you should expect to learn how to speak effectively. When you come into UNRS 260, Nutrition, you'll expect to study the contribution of nutrition to the prevention of chronic disease. But then there's another layer, I'm calling that relevant connections. Now, too much of this in the class is no longer what it is, but some of this is important. Not just because it keeps the class fresh, creates a sort of becomes interesting in different ways, but because it recognizes that human experience permeates various issues and realities. For example, in Introduction to Spanish, you're learning the grammar and vocabulary of a language. But cultural knowledge and skills for cultural engagement will also be a valuable, relevant, appropriate kind of thing to spend time with. Knowing how to read is an assumption in most literature classes. But if your professor took time to equip you to be a better reader, that's relevant to the class in which you're analyzing a lot of books. Finally, many classes provide opportunities to engage in themes of formation and witness. You are, after all, a human person. You're entering a world of persons and other living things. And there are times, still working from class focus and relevant connections, when something in the course provides an opportunity to figure out more about who you are and to figure out how you're going to carry yourself into the world and meaningfully and thoughtfully and with integrity into your profession. You think about, again, Dr. Heiho on Wednesday, a climate scientist, and she did this for us just the other day. She helped us to understand just enough, because this is chapel, not the 15-week course semester she does on climate change, but enough about her field. And then she helped us to see at a deeper level how, as Jesus people, as disciples, we are called to live with Christian love and Christian hope and not fear as we enter this particular kind of challenge. She helped give us some insight about who we're becoming and the kind of persons that we are in light of the reality, the challenge of climate change. Think about a Spanish class again. That Spanish speakers would learn the value, the virtue of hospitality, how to be welcoming to people that are strangers, that may speak a different language for them, a very relevant kind of theme there. In a sociology class, you might engage in the theme of shalom. In a consumer behavior class, there might be opportunity to consider guidance from the Christian faith for living in a consumptive world. In an anatomy or kinesiology class, you're going to get directly acquainted with bodies and understand how bodies work. But at this layer, it's also an opportunity to think about caring for your own body, the body that God has given you. And all of these offer potential opportunities for faith integration. Not every class is going to move in this direction. Not every part of a class is meant to do that. That's absolutely fine, appropriate, and really the way it should be. But where there are these opportunities, we can follow the instruction of the Apostle Paul, who reminded us to put on the mind of Christ. thinking about. He says, thinking about what is true, what is noble, what is right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, and praiseworthy. That this is the way we enter our fields of study, thinking about these things. Let me talk to you about how to go about this. And I want to use some of the Bible's learning words from Proverbs 23. Listen to the passage and notice the metaphor. By wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. Through knowledge its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. If you want to build a physical house, or think about building for yourself an education, you're going to need basic materials, right? The lumber, etc., the nails to be able to construct this house. You're going to need a firm foundation, a slab of concrete probably to put your structure on. And you're going to need appropriate furnishings ultimately to make that house beautiful. Chairs and art, carpets, lighting, whatever's going to make it functional and comfortable for you and for people to be there. Let's tie this to academic faith integration. First, you need to identify the essential knowledge of God's world and faithfully learn it. Delight in the vocabulary of all that's real. That's a starting point. Next, you'll want to probe that knowledge in light of faith-informed knowledge, leading to deeper understanding and wider insights. And finally, your goal is to turn these faith-informed insights into unique expressions of wisdom applied to the domain which you are involved in studying. And don't forget, wisdom from a biblical perspective synchronizes what you know with how you act and who you are becoming. Christian scholar A.G. Sertalanges talks about this when he says study is a divine office. Now let me stop there. What is an office or a divine office? An office is, of course, a place you go to work to carry out your responsibilities. You have a rhythm of attending work on a regular basis. And our spiritual life is like that. There are certain practices and activities we engage in order to connect on a regular basis with God through Scripture, through prayer. Sertalanges says study is itself a divine office, an indirect divine office. It seeks out and honors the traces of the Creator, or His images accordingly, as it investigates nature or humanity, but it must make way at the right moment for direct engagement with Him. As you study, anticipate the opportunity, the possibility of direct engagement with God. Let's talk about who for our final minutes. And I want you to understand the kind of person that does this. 3 things quickly. First, this is a person who gets in the way of grace. They make space in their life to be exposed to God's grace. That's the practice of spiritual disciplines. The grace that makes learning more possible and more probable in our lives. 1 Thessalonians 5 calls us to pray without ceasing. Let's apply that to study. God, we say before we study, God, help me. I'm about to read a difficult chapter in my book. God, would you be there to guide me and to help me? How about during study? Wow, God, there's a new thought. That's amazing. Or God, I don't understand that one. Give me some guidance. I'm trying to figure this out. And prayer after study. God, thank you for the truths that you've led me to. Secondly, we understand that we need to give effort. As much as God's grace is there, He doesn't just dump it all into our heads. God requires us to get up in the morning, to create a schedule, to sit our butts in the seat and to stay at it, right? There's effort on our part, and to find these rhythms is key. And finally, love. Love is a choice. And there might be some classes that are harder to love than others. I understand that. But to choose to do that, knowing that we're called to love God with all our heart, our soul, our mind, and our strength, and to use the knowledge we're given to love our neighbor as ourselves, to take these ideas, these words, these numbers, these theories, these codes of ethics, and use them as a doorway to deeper love for God and for the neighbors that God puts us in community with is key. I hope this helps you to embark on a task that we ask our faculty to give leadership to, but don't wait for them. Take initiative to look for these kinds of opportunities in your work, to in between assignments or in various reading assignments, or whether it's a paper you're assigned to or not, that you would take it upon yourself the privilege of doing this amazing thing, that you have a special season in life, 4 years, 4 precious years, to do something that you won't have as much time to do later on in life as you do now. Let me close this with a prayer from a theologian who's certainly a man who knows a lot about God, a theologian whose work is to study the scriptures, but who recognized his need for God's grace in the task of learning. Let me pray this prayer with you and for you, and when I'm finished, we'll be dismissed. O thou who art the source and ground of all truth, thou light of lights, who hast opened the minds of men to discern the things that are, guide me today, I beseech thee, in my hours of reading. Give me grace to choose the right books and to read them in the right way. Give me wisdom to abstain as well as to persevere. Let the Bible have proper place, and grant that in all my reading I may be alive to the stirrings of thy Holy Spirit in my soul. Amen. Thanks very much. Have a great weekend.